welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Before I jump into our second segment, let me remind you guys, if you missed any of the Rules of Engagement episodes, you missed any WCS content, any other content we do here at Major League Gaming, Winter Championships, upcoming Spring Championships, we put it all on our YouTube site for free in 1080p quality. So go ahead and check it out, youtube.com/official. NLGSE2 for all your Starcraft 2 needs for free in 1080p quality. Our second segment is going to be on a TVT, talking about transitioning to air versus mech and when you want to do so. So first we'll talk about opening builds, defending Banshee Harass. Then when to properly transition to air and TVT, and then also on the flip side, how to react to that air transition if your opponent is trying to go for BCs, Banshees, etc. So we'll start this replay off at about the 6-minute mark. And the one thing I want to point out is the builds of the opponent. So Neeb, of course, went for an expansion, and then the factory, and then the starport. His opponent, Taeja, going straight for pretty much the fastest cloak Banshee possible. Now, Neeb has been able to identify his opponent when he gas first from the SCV scout, a very fast factory. So he knows gas first, it could be very fast Banshee, it could be some drop play. If it's one of these two things, it's not really bad to ever go ahead and get some turrets. So, against any type of Banshee drop play, the first priority is to protect your mineral lines. Make sure your SCVs are safe. So go ahead and get that eBay, learn the timing. You want to make sure that you start that eBay at like the 5:45 mark, something like that. 5:50 mark is fine too. Start it a little bit before the 6-minute mark. And the instant it finishes, you can go ahead and build one turret in each mineral line, right? And those will get done in time to stop the first Banshee that can hit your base. And this is if you scout your opponent going very fast gas with the potential to rush straight to Banshees. Now, it's important to get that missile turret up very fast in mineral line. Make sure the SCVs are safe. But what is the Banshee player going to do when they see that missile turret? They're going to circle around it, right? And they're going to circle around it, go through your base, right? And hit the SCVs at the other side. So think about this, right? You have this missile turret here. What can your opponent's Banshee do? Well, yes, the missile turret can protect about this zone of SCVs, right? But Mr. Banshee, or Mrs. Banshee, I guess you should say, she can go ahead and come around here and then attack this area here. Also deny this area here. Those two areas are dangerous. Now, it's okay to have one area cut off for a little bit. You can just make sure the SCV is mined at the top. But you don't want to have both these cut off ideally. Now, if you look back in the main as well, we can see here back in the main base, it's the same idea, right? The Banshee from this angle, right? This missile turret protects this much of the mineral line roughly from a Banshee if it's microed very well. But the Banshee coming in here, right? If it's going to come up here, it can go ahead and kill this, and then it can circle around to be up here and go and kill that area as well, right? Now, obviously, there's no such thing as like a 100% bulletproof defense unless you want to build a billion turrets. But notice both these routes. This key turret here is super important. So first, protect both their mineral lines. Second, try to build a turret that prevents your opponent from doing these loops through your base and coming in at different angles that can really bother you. So this turret here, all of a sudden, when it's trying to hit that loop, you can kill with that turret. On the same hand, right? If we take a look at the other loop, it would go, right? So you have the Banshee over here. If the Banshee over here, you have your Banshee here, and it's trying to do that loop around up here that we just saw, this turret can really mess with it as well. Kind of has to thread the needle between two turrets. Much more difficult for the Banshees to operate if you get that one turret that prevents it from just kind of running through your main base in between your two bases. So, priority, always protect those mineral lines. Secondary concern, protect your production facilities, the factory, the barracks, etc., as well as make it more difficult for it to maneuver around your bases. Now, if you do these two simple things, we can notice, of course, this Banshee here, unable to do too much damage. Even though it's Taeja controlling, his control is absolutely amazing. He's only able to get 2 SCVs, has to back away. Scan's going to push this one out. And then this Banshee was kind of annoying because it got into this section. But now with this missile turret, let's take a look at the second Banshee coming out from Taeja. It's going to be over here. Let's fast forward through this crossing the map here. What can this Banshee do, right? He knows there's 2 turrets in the mineral line. He's going to try to come inside the main base. But his turret here deflects him, right? And he has to go back. And now where's he going to go to find an area to do damage? In fact, he's going to scan and kill. But with the turret separated like this, it's very difficult. There's no room for that Banshee to kind of sneak in, either camp the production, kill the SCVs over here, kill the SCVs over here, etc. Right? Either has to come around the top, and then this turret will spot it, can be zoned out. Just that third turret protecting your production lines as well as the air between your bases can help out a lot against that Banshee type of harass. So now we see, go back to production tab, Neeb, of course, has a slight advantage, right? He's got a few more workers than his opponent. Slightly faster third base. His third base has started. His opponent hasn't started his third base yet. A very slight advantage. Also already has the armory done going to Hellbats. Not the end of the world, though, right? The Banshee still forced 2 scans. And Taeja realizes he has some of a unit advantage right now. He's going to try to do some damage. But Neeb should be okay against this, given the fact that he does have a couple of Hellbats in his composition. Has to pull a few SCVs to tank this. A little bit of a poke attack with the Hellbats, Hellions, and Vikings. He's going to hold this off without too much of a problem. And remember, the third base is still almost done. So even though now Taeja has a slight worker advantage, with this third command center finishing right now, that's going to give the economic advantage slightly back in Neeb's favor, right? Taeja now getting his own third CC, but a little bit behind Neeb's. Going forward here, we can see 2 things. One, Taeja, of course, is going bio, right? We can see that with the multiple barracks, stim, pack, combat shield, etc. Neeb is going for mech. Now, one thing to notice, if you're going mech, you typically don't have too much anti-air units. You're mostly focusing on Hellbats and tanks, are your 2 best mech units in TVT. A few Widow Mines sprinkled around can be very annoying as well. But it's mostly really tanks and Hellbats, tanks and Hellbats. So you have to be careful about an air transition from your opponent. And the first thing you want to do as they're going mech is you want to make sure that you have a bunch of Vikings at your disposal, right? So you have a bunch of Vikings, you get a few medevacs to do some of this cool drop play, but you also want to make sure you always have air control with those Vikings. Now as the bio player, you typically don't want to battle too much for air control early on in the game. Why not? Because as a bio player, it's much more important to have a lot of medevacs at your disposal, because of course they heal all of your units, whereas the mech player to only heal the Hellbats. So the bio player really needs to focus on medevac production, typically why he's going to give up map control, or give up air control, excuse me, to the mech player. And now Taeja's going out for this little attack, right? Right now all things are fairly even. Neeb's getting a hit in base, that can give him a slight advantage. It's not going to be the end of the world though. But what's big here is Taeja tries to break his opponent. He scans, sees only a few tanks, a few Hellbats he thinks he can break with this army. But unfortunately, he underestimates the tanking power of the Hellbats. And also, this little notch right here, he lost a few units before they could even really start closing in distance. And he ends up taking the worst end of this fight, right? Just killing a few Hellbats. Every bio unit dies, though he's only able to kill a single siege tank in that engagement. Then, of course, he's going to be forced back as well. So, now a situation where Neeb has an economic advantage due to just having a few more workers, due to having 4 bases. In fact, 5th command center, I think, is somewhere on the way. No, just 4 bases on right now versus 3 of Taeja's, as well as having an army advantage too. Look at army supply, a little bit more army supply for Neeb. So, what does Taeja do from here? Immediately realizing, you know what? I've made a couple mistakes. I overextended on this attack. My early harass and doing thing, I'm a little bit behind. And I'm kind of worried, because if you're a little bit behind in TVT going battle versus mech, you're thinking, okay, right now, it's okay. I can make tanks and defend. About 2 minutes from now, my opponent, with this superior production, right? He's going to have a lot of factories. In fact, it's 5 factories versus 5 barracks. And a factory is worth more than a barracks, right? It's a more expensive production building. So, with Neeb's superior production, in about 2 minutes from now, 3 minutes maybe, he's going to max out. I'm going to have a very difficult time defending this max out attack that could come and hit me. So instead of just trying to defend on the ground, realizing I'm behind as far as ground forces go, I'm trying to be sneaky. I'm going to go to an air transition. So hide a bunch of Vikings, build up that Viking count. Remember how I said when you're going mech, it's super important to have the air control? And that's exactly what Neeb has, right? Neeb has 6 Vikings, his opponent has 1. But Neeb doesn't realize that Taeja is in fact secretly building up Vikings. If he did, he would go ahead and be building his own Vikings. But right now, instead, because he assumes he already has air control, he's focusing on tanks and Hellbats and the ground units, which is what every player is going to do, every good player is going to do. So Taeja is sneaking into this air control, a sneaky air transition, and this can work because he knows in about 2 to 3 minutes from a minute ago, so 1 to 2 minutes from now, his opponent's going to be maxed out. His opponent's going to have a stronger ground army, the best way to beat that is by having air control and having some air units, because the ground army is going to be all tanks and hellbats, tanks and hellbats. So as we fast forward this through the next minute or so, we can see that's exactly what's happening. Neeb has a much stronger ground army here, a lot of tanks and hellbats. So as soon as he decides to move out, getting a few missile turrets. So what's the other threat when you move out here? Is a counterattack. A counterattack straight, these tanks on this choke point will do very well, plus whatever rally units he has coming to reinforce. But your opponent could drop on a tank, so he's getting a few missile turrets to protect these tanks from being dropped on. So a cool little move there by Neeb to make sure he's safe from counterattacks. Let's go ahead and move out with his superior ground force. And Taeja, of course, is going to have a weaker army. Even when the tanks are unsieged, this small bioforce is going to get mowed down. But what's here now? There's 2 Banshees. And 2 Banshees are going to just destroy all these tanks until the tanks die. Of course, the Hellbats don't really stand much of a chance against this very significant bioforce. And now Neeb's in a situation where he's like, okay, I got caught off guard by the Banshees, I lost my army. But what's the real situation? I was able to deal a lot of damage to his third base. In the meantime, economically, I'm still going to be ahead, right? He doesn't know the exact work count, of course, he's not observing the game, but he knows his opponent's on 3 bases, and a third base took some serious damage. He knows he's on 5 bases, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with the hidden base, and he knows he hasn't lost any workers the entire game. Those are 2 things he knows. And he also knows his opponent has a sneaky air transition. So he's ahead in economy, but his opponent kind of caught him off guard with the air transition. Now, if you have to react to an air transition, the most important thing is you need to buy time for your production to kick in. So how can you do that? The most important thing is protect your production. All these production facilities, including the new starports you're trying to build, they're both right here, right? Is the most important thing. Make sure these starports and these factories stay protected is a priority. Number 2, try to defend your essential bases. In this situation, Neeb can afford to lose a base or 2. As long as he stays on 3 bases, protects his production. So the best way to do that, temporarily, build tanks and turrets. Right? He already has tanks. He's fine. In fact, he might actually want to be building Thors because he has enough tanks to defend the ground army. But the key thing is how can your opponent get to your production? Well, they can either get through this way, so you build a few more turrets here, or they can walk straight up the ramp. So if they're going to walk straight up the ramp, where should your tanks be? It's pretty simple. All your tanks should be right here. Right? Or pretty much almost all of them. Why right here and not in a natural? Because you want to defend your third base as well, right? And if you put your tanks here, they can protect your third base as well as your natural. Of course, your opponent has a lot of siege tanks. They can come up along the bottom and siege them up like right there. And then your third base will be in trouble. But if you don't have siege tanks, you can easily protect the third just with your own siege tanks down here. So this is the location you need to defend in order to protect your production and your 3 base economy. So you siege tanks there, then you build a whole bunch of missile turrets right in front of the tanks to protect them. Alright? Maybe those missile turrets eventually get picked out. Maybe you have to pull 20 SCVs in its own, put them on auto repair to get those turrets up, to keep the tanks alive from the benches until the turrets get up, etc. But that's okay. It's much better to lose 20, 30 SCVs than it is to let your opponent get in your production line. The priority is always never let your opponent get up this ramp. If they get up this ramp, you're dead. So you have to stop them from getting up that ramp. To get up that ramp, to get into your main, to get into your main, to camp your production. To camp your production, you can't build the units. You can't build the units, you lose the game. So this is the location you really want to defend right here. I mean, yes, you could defend out here too, but that's a much more big open area. It's easier to defend back and when you're kind of tucked in and your opponent doesn't have much of a concave, right? There's only a small area they can come at you. So that's the ideal spot to defend. Now, unfortunately, if you get back in the game, Neeb, really 30 seconds ago, when the battle's over here, 30 seconds ago, he should have been building turrets and trying to set up this defense. Unfortunately, he realizes this is the defense he needs to hold, so he puts his units there, right? Because he knows he has to defend its production, but he doesn't build the missile turrets. And because he doesn't build the missile turrets, the Banshee starts shooting at him, and he freaks out, right? He's like, oh no, there's Banshees shooting at me. Yes, they're going to kill your tanks. It's kind of bad. So he runs to the protection of his missile turrets. When he runs to the missile turrets, what does that leave open? Leaves open this ramp, and then of course Taeja's going to run up this ramp. He's going to go ahead and get straight into the production. And when he's straight into the production, there's nothing Neeb can do. Any unit he builds, any Viking he builds gets killed by the Marines. Any Thor he builds gets killed by the Marauders before it can even really get built. So and his army is now trying to walk through the AoE. So he went back to the missile turrets to avoid the banshees and tanks. He had to end up walking through the banshees and tanks anyway. It takes a lot of losses. Meanwhile, he lost a Thor, he lost a bunch of Vikings, and he just gets annihilated here, right? So, I mean, that's going to be the game. Of course, Taeja's going to win now. He's in his bonus production. And it's interesting, he wins. Even when he wins, the economy is still insane, right? There's a little counterattack here. Neeb could have afforded to pull... He could have afforded to be at 20 SCVs right now. Because the fact is, remember, he's on 5 base, right? He's on 5 base with his bottom left versus an opponent's 3. He could even be down by workers. He'd still be fine economically. So he could afford to put, like, even without the missile turrets here, he could have pulled 30 SCVs, put him auto repair, and tried to just let the tanks take damage from the banshees. Lose a bunch of units until Thor gets out, until he can catch him in Viking County, would have been okay. The key thing to think about as far as how this game went, of course, going to be, remember, if your opponent is going a 1-base tech build, they're getting banshees, they're going draw play, hellbat drop, mod drop, whatever it is, go ahead and get those missile turrets. Try to get the E-base started right before the 6-minute mark. You'll have those missile turrets up in time to deflect their 1-base aggressions. If you ever scout your opponent doing 1-base tech in TVT and you're expanding, go for those missile turrets. They're a great idea to defend that 1-base aggression. If you're playing against a mech player and they're going exclusively tanks and hellbats, try going for the air transition. You might be able to catch them off guard. You catch them off guard, you get a bunch of free kills. At the very least, you get some awesome map control. Then, of course, the most important thing as a Terran versus any race, defend your production. If your opponent ever gets right into your production like this, you're probably going to lose the game. So above all, the most important base for Terran is always that production. So always go ahead, defend that production, more important than anything else. Never let your opponent get into your production facilities. They're going to camp it. It's going to be a little bit ugly. This wraps up our second segment. We'll take a short break and be right into our third segment of the day, another TVP.